Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the front page story on the Mail on Sunday today as they hype the economic damage about to be caused by the new phase of Brexit coming online soon and manage to claim that somehow it's the fault of the EU as opposed to the fault of those who supported Brexit. After all, if we'd never left the EU, this would not be happening. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So it sort of feels like Grifter's Day. I was talking about Rishi Sunak's grift this morning. Now the Tory client media's grift. I'll be talking about Nigel Farage's next grift later. But for all the travel delays we've experienced so far, there are more restrictions coming. The Mail on Sunday, on its front page, was ramping up the hysteria about these to fever pitch, which may seem odd when you consider that ultimately this is a problem which would not exist, for us anyway, without Brexit. But of course they're aiming to use it to attack the EU. Now, before I go over where I see the problems with this strategy, let's just cover some of the things in the article, a couple of which are just plain false. The first is the headline on the online version, which labels the story as an exclusive. Now, an exclusive means you're reporting on facts unknown to other outlets or basing it on an interview which only they have obtained. No, they're just talking about something that's been known about for years, about which I've done several videos already over the years. There's nothing exclusive about it. But that's small fry, that's a minor point. They also make another very spurious point. Essentially, this story is about ETIAS. It's a new border security measure which the EU are implementing around Schengen. Not really sure why the Mail are upset about it. It's all about securing borders. They like that, don't they? But it involves biometric scans for all non-EU citizens as they cross Schengen borders, such as, say, France, for example. And the article claims that the system is new and that it could be seen as revenge by Brussels for Brexit. But this is clearly false for a couple of reasons, really. First of all, people travelling into Schengen are spending money in those economies. If the EU wanted to go to all this expense and trouble just to create a system whereby it's going to make it less likely that British tourists are going to spend money in their economies, you'd have to think, well, what sort of idiot government would do that? Apart from ours, I mean. But second, ETIAS was agreed by the EU back in early 2016. Yes, that was before the Brexit referendum. So not only was the scheme decided on before Brexit was even happening, but the UK were very much part of the process of that agreement, even if not the implementation, because that came later. So on no level could it be considered revenge for anything, because it was decided while we still thought that Remain would win. It's really just a security system so that countries know who is going to pass through their territories, something Brexiteers are constantly banging on about the importance of. There are some points not properly explored in the article as well. So, for example, it quotes Tory Brexiteer Natalie Elphicke, an MP for Dover, who keeps raging about the consequences of the Brexit she supported. She says there needs to be an urgent plan to avoid chaos at the border. Now, here's the thing. ETIAS was agreed over 7 years ago. The rough blueprint of how it was going to work was decided just over 6 years ago. I would also add that just over 6 years ago, the Conservative government had already decided that we would be leaving the EU along with the Single Market and Customs Union, even though those last two bits were never part of the referendum. So they knew that we were going to be a third country when ETIAS came online. So if we've known that we needed to deal with it for over 6 years, why do we need an urgent plan all of a sudden? Why didn't we have a plan already worked out? Astoundingly, the Mail doesn't bother to ask that question. The Mail hypes up the tension of the upcoming scheme by emphasising the need for British travellers to provide sensitive personal information. They say that some people are not happy with providing this information to Brussels. This is not a problem. Just don't travel into the Schengen area. No one's forcing you. Seriously, can you imagine the reverse position? If the UK government announced that, we don't trust all these people from Europe, we want detailed information on people travelling from the EU into Britain. The Mail would wholeheartedly support this, wouldn't they? And let us imagine that EU citizens said, well, we're not happy to hand over this personal information to London. Can you imagine the Mail having any sympathy at all? I can't. And that's the thing that irritates me most about these people. It's not so much that their views are different to mine. You know, it's not their arguments. Like, if they were at least honest brokers with their arguments, because you can engage, you can go, okay, you've presented that idea. Well, what about this counterpoint? But they are steaming hypocrites. That's the problem. Steaming hypocrites. But the article also makes mention of the hundreds of millions of pounds of damage to the economy and the long queues at European airports. Now, the damage to the economy, sure. But I would say in terms of like port delays, I think you're mostly talking about seaports. When it comes to airports, to be fair, you've got biometric scans already often in use there. I'm not a seasoned traveller. Other people just tell me that when they're working, they work quite well. So I could be wrong, but I've not heard of any particular reason from a sensible source why there would be longer queues at airports than already exist. Long term, at least in the long term. Now, it is, of course, probable that they are talking about when the scheme first opens, or they don't make that clear. Oh yeah, there'll be more delays then. But I mean, once it's bedded in, I don't think it'll be worse than it is now, which, okay, might be bad enough for many travellers. After all, the visa lasts for 3 years. So it's not like you have to deal with all this input of data every time you travel. Also, it'll mean there should be no need for passport stamping. That's a serious source of delay. So actually, it could end up, you know, if you travel at least more than once every 3 years, end up being a system which over time actually speeds the queues up through the airports, surely. But yeah, when it's first rolled out, yes, could well be bedlam. But where there might be some genuine point of interest, so in the article, I think it made one point of genuine interest. It's a quote from another Tory MP, David Jones, saying that it wouldn't be so bad if travellers could submit all this visa information ahead of time at special offices around the country, which would, of course, be staffed by French officials. So it's not like they'd have to trust British officials to do it, okay? And you would say, okay, that sounds like a sensible enough way forward. Although there's no reflection on the fact that maybe, just maybe, the EU couldn't be arsed with this because of the way the Tories behaved with regards to Northern Ireland. I'm just speculating, of course. But remember that Boris Johnson agreed with the Northern Ireland Protocol. He agreed that the EU could have officers so that their officials could monitor the application of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Because the issue with the Northern Ireland Protocol is it created a UK-EU border, but wholly within the UK. Very strange. But for EU officials to be able to monitor it, they needed officers in Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson said, yeah, no problem, no problem. But then as soon as we left the single market, it started being difficult about that. Oh, you don't need officers. But we agreed, yeah, we don't need them. Cue about 2 years of strife before Sunak came in and agreed to be sensible. Well, what if that experience put them off? After all, what if the EU worked on this basis of, okay, we'll do this. The UK are going to allow us these officers. We'll send officials there and, you know, we'll sort all this out and be fine. But actually they're thinking, yeah, but they've been acting in bad faith for all this time. And we don't trust them. I'm sorry, but these Tories have to accept that when they have been acting in bad faith for so many years, and this stretches back years now, they should expect the EU to implement future policies with as little reliance on UK cooperation as possible. That being said, there are plans to allow for the submission of biometric data ahead of time. It's just that the system's not in place yet. And actually, it should be a much simpler system than David Jones is even talking about. So I'm not sure where the issue is there. It's maybe just a fear that this system won't be in place when ETIAS goes live. But then that's faced so many delays anyway. It's not clear when it will go live. You know, it talks in this article about next year. Okay. You know, it also talks about the fact that, you know, France wants it delayed until after the Olympics, which I've come across from other sources as well. So we still don't know when it's going to be implemented. But when it is, the major problems, I don't think are going to be at the airports. I think this is the seaports where it's a big issue. Not as straightforward to have scanning for passports where the vehicles are funneling in. You know, they do say they expect Dover to be the worst hit, and I think this is almost certainly why. You're going to have to get out of your vehicles to go to a scanning area and then back again. And as I mentioned before, if you delay vehicles being able to get through at the port, you delay ferries in loading up, which means they do fewer runs. I mean, they've already had this problem, and that's no good for their business model. So expect this to get more expensive, which won't just affect people who travel through Dover, but everyone, because it will raise the cost of haulage as well. And the article says that Folkestone, for example, where the Eurotunnel is, they're working on building a huge area for people to park while people submit their data. So it's like lorry parks again, isn't it? Brexit is adding a significant delay to travel while people have to park up when they did not have to do that when we were in the EU. And we would not have to do that when we're in the EU. As for the way the Mail is reporting it, it is odd. They are effectively reporting on the ongoing damage of Brexit, but for what purpose? They're trying to blame the EU, but why? How does that help them? It's highlighting how life is becoming more complicated outside the EU, isn't it? Also, it's reminding people that we don't hold all the cards either. It's all right, so it's the EU being spiteful. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? Apparently, we held all the cards. Where are our cards? Where are they? Oh, they're in the post. What happened to getting all the benefits of membership with none of the drawbacks? What possible outcome are they hoping to gain from presenting a story like this? Because if you ask me, the situation is as follows. More and more people are wanting to join the EU, with fewer and fewer saying we should stay out. It's a clear trend here. And this is despite the government trying to muddy the waters with Putin and COVID used as cover for Brexit damage. It's not worked as well as they'd hoped. Now, I'm going to suggest that if we are turning away from Brexit when the waters are muddied like this with global issues, that this trend is not going to swing into reverse as some of those global issues calm down and the Brexit issues carry on getting worse. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.